welcome to another episode of Floyd Street's Finest. I'm your host, Jeff Greer, joined this week by the producer, the man, the myth, the legend, Jack Grossman. Of course, we are very excited to be part of the Field of 68 Media Network, which has put on just about 1 million podcasts for you, and there's so many good ones. So especially this time of year, Super Bowl already happened. Shouts to Rihanna. Thank you for that. That was great. Great Super Bowl. Very exciting. I'm sorry. I'm a Rihanna super fan, Jack. And it's not a super fan in the sense of like, you're not going to hear me listening 24/7 to just Rihanna. But when she performs on a show like that and she's doing all of her hits or a lot of them, you just kind of are like, every single time she has a song on the radio, you're like, I enjoy that song. And she just had so many. She didn't even perform probably half of the songs that she could have performed. Anyway.
Jeff, you're going to hurt me.
Why? Because you don't like Rihanna?
No, I don't care when it comes to music most of the time. But
that's fine.
I did not see a second of the halftime performance.
Were you gambling? What were you doing? Were you,
no, I was at a sports bar with some friends.
Okay.
And we had kind of gone through our course of food and drinks. So we were relocating to someone else's apartment.
Okay, that's fine. That's what halftime is usually for, is figuring out if the vibes aren't right for the first half, you got to find a new spot. But yes, very proud of Field of 68, and like I was saying, look, the Super Bowl is over. I know all these dorks, no offense, Jack, I know you're probably in pitchers and catchers report. They play 175 million games. Like, baseball doesn't matter until October.
Hey, it's 162 million games.
Baseball doesn't matter until October. So let's not all act like all of a sudden it's baseball season.
It's not
season. It's college basketball season, so please stop. So for the next month or so, it's a great time to tap in with the Field of 68 and do your research, listen to some different perspectives, and start thinking about that all-important bracket and what to be looking for in March. So with that being said, another episode of Floyd Street's Finest is in the books. We'll see you all later. Thanks so much for watching. But no, Jack and I are going to have a nice discussion here. And look, we challenged ourselves before we came on here because, and first of all, for those who are watching on the stream, I feel like I have to mention this because I'm that self-conscious. My child's face. So if you're wondering like, oh, what happened to Greer? His cheek look like that. My child, who is almost 2 now, almost 13 months, was placed in the bed the other morning and let's wake up dad mode. And yeah, just did the old owl to the face routine with his claws that he calls fingers.
You couldn't. I couldn't tell anything until you mentioned it. So
but now you can't look away. Now you can't look away.
It's not that I can't look away, just that I see it once you look for it.
There you go.
So I think everyone sees it now because you brought it up.
I feel like it's like 1 day away from me no longer mentioning it, but I'm still mentioning it to people because they seem like I got a couple looks the other day like I am a drug kingpin or something and was involved in a fracas of some kind.
You still could have worn makeup. You could have done that.
I could have worn makeup. I could have. But as I was saying, Jack and I really want to. It's very easy. I mean, Louisville just is coming off of as of us recording this, coming off of a big win against Clemson yesterday. So I want to steer away from the same old conversation. I feel like we've all had it, whether it's on a podcast once a week, whether it's on a radio show every day, whether it's a newsletter once a week, which is something that I'm struggling with and having to figure out, or covering the team and writing about them more frequently than that. We're all in the same boat of trying to find interesting ways to talk about certain things as we kind of get towards the end of the season. In other years, I've experienced this where we knew there was going to be a coaching search, and in this case, you kind of know that the roster is going to get a complete makeover. So we're kind of all just waiting to see, hey, maybe a couple guys surprise you, and just see where things are by the end of the season. So again, we'll give our flowers to Louisville. It made a lot of tough shots, but we're able to against Clemson late in that second half and get a big win. So I want to start here, Jack. So I want to change the tune of the pod. And I wrote about it in my newsletter, but I want to expand on it a little bit in the podcast. And I know this is a topic that will resonate with you as a kid who grew up in Louisville. Before the season started, we had this discussion. Again, I wrote about it. I think people were talking about it quite a bit because it reminded me of the 2014-15 season buildup with Terry Rozier. Now,
much different team.
Much different team. Much different team. Different coach. You got a Hall of Fame coach in that moment, 2 years removed from a national championship. You've got Chris Jones and Quentin Snyder. Now, Quentin Snyder at the time was an unproven freshman who really didn't play a whole lot, as people probably will remember, until the Chris Jones situation arose, and he was arrested on charges of sexual assault. He was eventually found that there was not enough evidence, or he was exonerated in a grand jury, so that did not ever go to trial or anything like that. The charges no longer are I don't know how to phrase that, Jack, but
they're not a thing anymore.
Yeah, he was kicked off.
Yeah.
And so Louisville had other guards, but Terry Rozier coming into the season had a lot of hype around him. He was starting to climb up into the first round of the NBA draft mocks, and there was a lot of discussion about how much he would be relied on as a scorer for Louisville. Now, they had Montrezl Harrell too, but really a lot of the focus was going to be on Terry, and maybe, hey, this was finally going to be the year that Wayne Blackshear had a breakout season, right?
Which it was finally in the NCAA tournament. It did happen.
He had a breakout NCAA tournament, so kudos to Wayne Blackshear. But as the season progressed, Terry Rozier was playing a ton of minutes. By the end of the year, he was averaging like 35 minutes a game. He played a ton of minutes. He took a lot of shots. He had the ball in his hands a lot, even with Jones, who was also kind of a shoot first point guard. Terry Rozier had the ball in his hands a ton, especially once Jones was kicked off the team. Then Terry really was asked to do a lot, and Quentin was kind of like, hey, he was like Terry Rozier the year before. Hey, just do your job and let this superstar in the backcourt with you take things over. And he ended up having a great season. Shooting percentages weren't awesome, but he had a bunch of heater games, rebounded really well, was a big steals guy, and ended up having a really impressive run his sophomore year. And with this team this year, in no way, shape, or form was I thinking that this team was going to be anywhere near that team just in general. I thought at best Louisville this year would figure out a way to play with the roster that it had constructed. Maybe Kenny Payne could get his guys to play their asses off for him, and they're like an NIT competitive type team. Maybe. I thought in a dream scenario that's probably where they are, maybe fringe NCAA tournament. I think most people probably thought that was the ceiling. I did not think that the floor was what it is. But regardless of any of that, if Louisville was going to have a good season, 500 or better season, or even just a competitive season where they go, I don't know, 14 and 18 or something like that, I thought Ellis in particular needed to have a Terry Rozier 2014-15 type season for Louisville to make progress as a team through the course of the year. We knew he was going to have to play a ton of minutes with the backcourt set up the way it was. Without the help that he really didn't have a whole lot of help in terms of ball handling and the scoring production, but also he's been a big time assist guy this year compared to where he's been. I shouldn't say big time, but he has drastically improved in that category with the ball in his hands more, as you would think. And if you go and sit down and look at the numbers comparing 14-15 Rozier to 22-23 Ellis, they're really similar. And so I don't know what that means for Ellis. I don't know what that means past this season. I really don't know. It's my understanding that before the year, he said on our podcast, this is his last year. He's thinking about it in those terms, Jack. But what can we say? What's your takeaway from seeing him play now 26, 27 games, and just the way that he has performed this year, especially considering just about everything around him?
Yeah, I think, obviously that's the biggest difference between him and Terry Rozier was that Rozier had a guy who's still in the NBA and Montrezl Harrell, and he had a guy in Wayne Blackshear that had been through the battles before and ended up having a really huge NCAA tournament last month of his career there, to where you had, a Hall of Fame head coach, to where you get a 4
He had a
seed
lot, yeah.
and you make
And
it all those things. Yeah.
Quentin Snyder, to his credit, Quentin Snyder
Yeah,
has been
he
a
played his
pro.
role.
He's been a pro in Europe now for a few years, and has had a pretty successful career over there. So yes, the supporting cast is not comparable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think the conversation around Ellis has changed from, originally, we've brought this up before, but I think it's worth bringing up again here. The conversation wasn't Ellis is your only point guard. It was, can Ellis play point guard? Can he be a guy that can distribute the ball and facilitate and do all these things? And that got lost in the shuffle when Louisville's coaching staff kind of struck out in the transfer portal, and they didn't really add a whole lot from that standpoint. But those were questions that were clearly there, was, can he be the primary ball handler on a team that really doesn't have another dude that can do that? To where he was the only option. And yeah, there's been some turnover struggles and some inefficient nights at times, but we've seen a guy that's really grown into that role, to where, yes, he is obviously the go-to scorer. He is obviously have to be score first more often than not, just because Louisville doesn't have those options. But he's a guy that can have 7 assists in a game against Florida State a few games ago. That isn't turning the ball over at an incredibly high rate later in the season, and is being a lot more consistent than he was earlier in the year. He's been over 20 points in 4 of his last 5 games. He's shooting the ball with decent percentages, which is hard to do with how much he's being used. I mean, they aren't, something that you're going to, put on an award poster or anything in terms of his percentages, but with how high of a usage rate that he has, and how much Louisville is asking him to do, it's been genuinely impressive. And I would say the most impressive thing that we've seen out of anyone from Louisville this year, and I don't think it's particularly close, to where he has filled in that role of what Louisville has needed him to do in order for them to be successful. He's been, unfortunately for him, not much else has been able to do that. And it's just hard to separate that with Ellis and everyone else. But that's not something I feel like you can really blame Ellis for. He hasn't been perfect by any means, but he has been one of the guys that we can say, okay, at the start of the year, Louisville needs this, this, and this to go right. He's the one that you can point to and say, okay, you got that. Mike James, another one that at times you can point to and you say, we got that. JJ Traynor.
He was the next guy. He was the next guy I was going to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, the game he had against Clemson, career high in points. Obviously, it's easy to praise a guy who has career high in points, but he's attacking both on the glass and on the drive, as he had that dunk that everyone's been talking about. He's making plays defensively. He had basically the game-sealing block at the end of that game.
Yeah.
He's just playing with so much more confidence and so much more aggression than what we've seen from him in his first 2-3 years at Louisville, to where you say, okay, if you can do that consistently, that's a guy that can be an ACC player. That's a guy that can have a role on this team, even if Ellis doesn't come back next year, which, as you point out, he's on the pod, he's not planning on it. Of course, things can change, and maybe NIL has something that could play a role in that as well. But even if Ellis doesn't come back, you're looking at this roster and saying, yes, there's going to be an overhaul, but who can you trust to stick around to be a player? And JJ Traynor is trying to make that case the last few games of, look, I'm a guy that's a local dude that wants to be here, and now I'm playing hard and showing stuff that's more tangible on the floor than just being the local guy. Yeah. And that's something that, frankly, I'll be quite honest, I always saw, kind of the potential there, but I never really expected him to put it all together. And yes, it's just a small sample size, but he's showing flashes of a potential, and he put it together for a complete game against Clemson, where you'd say, okay, maybe that's a guy you can trust next year, to where you try to put together building blocks to get the program out of the rut that it's in right now.
Well, the interesting thing about Traynor, so first of all, he gets 5 years. He'll have a 5th year because of the COVID eligibility waiver. But the interesting thing about him is, I feel like his freshman year was kind of pressed into playing a little bit more than I think anyone thought that he
was playing center also, which made absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it was odd. But he had his moments that season, and I think, it's hard for a Tiger to change their stripes. So Chris Mack looks at a kid like that. He's 6'9", 6'10". He needs to add a bunch of muscle, and he needs to be a little bit more physical inside. And I think what we're learning is that it's not always easy to put on muscle like that and put on weight. And I always go back to Mango Mathiang and Anas Mahmoud telling me what their diets were.
I wish I had those diets.
Why
can't I have that issue?
It was bad. I mean, it was like honey buns, Taco Bell. Mango Mathiang said like he just can't eat enough honey buns. Like he's trying to gain weight. They give him these protein shakes that
I shouldn't be laughing, but
it was just it was kind of funny. It was funny at the time, and he was laughing about it. And eventually, Mango Mathiang became a pretty serviceable, solid starting center in the ACC by the time he was a senior. In fact, I believe he was the starting center for the team that we were just talking about, the 14-15 team?
That was the year. It was kind of a weird year. Louisville got like almost no offensive production out of their centers that year.
Okay, so then it was maybe the year after that?
Chinano Onuaku was technically the starter. Yeah, but it was basically just a 3-man rotation of Onuaku, Mango, and Anas that year. And then the next year in 2015-16 with Damian Lee, Trey Lewis, Onuaku kind of asserted himself as the starting center. You start doing that, throws, and then 2016-17, it was Mango and Anas. And it was kind of just okay. Which dude's going to show up today? Which I still stick with. Louisville probably beats Michigan in 2017 if as great of and phenomenal of a coach Rick Pitino was. I'll never understand why he didn't play Mango Mathiang more in that second half because he defended Mo Wagner very well in that game, and no one else.
Mahmoud missed that dunk.
Anas Mahmoud did miss the dunk, yes, but Mango defensively on Mo Wagner, and I am on a complete separate tangent, and
this is you're way off the reservation here.
Yeah, but Mango Mathiang, very solid player.
I'm looking at his final run, and pretty much from this Clemson game on January 19th. He had double-digit scoring in a whole bunch of games. He had a rough spell here, but he was rebounding at a high rate and played well at the end of the season. So
I will say the year that we were talking about, though, that was the year that he did hit the shot against Virginia.
Yeah, there you go. So, but to the larger point, if you stick with something long enough, perhaps it will pay off. And Anas Mahmoud, same thing. It stuck with him for a while, and eventually he at least got to the point where he was a solid ACC center. He wasn't going to be the star of the show every night or even most nights, but he could block shots. He could do some things. He wasn't getting pushed around as easily as he was as a freshman. And with JJ Traynor, you just kept wondering early on, like I would go to practice and he would hit a 3. And he would have a big dunk, and you'd be like, okay, yeah, I could see the potential. And you can see where coaches who were looking at him probably thought, like, this kid, there's a player in there somewhere. There's a consistent guy in there somewhere who can do some pretty special things. How do I tap into that? And clearly, the previous staff did not really figure that out entirely. He had a decent freshman year, but definitely regressed as a sophomore. And I heard Kenny Payne talking about this after one of the first games of the season. When I was in person, I asked about JJ, and he was just saying, like, we're trying to build confidence in him. We're trying to build aggression in him. As to your point, Jack, it's finally starting to come out and show a little bit more and more, to the point where you're like, if you're going to have to revamp this roster,
which you're going to,
but you have to say to yourself, with the guys who you might want to bring back, maybe it's not as heavy of a lift as we thought like 3 weeks ago. I think Mike James, Kamari Lands, JJ Traynor, like for sure, those 3 guys, I look at those guys. And again, this is under the assumption that Ellis is not coming back. If Ellis is coming back, if he comes back, that's a game changer for Louisville, because then you don't need to go out and find multiple guards to take things over. You need to go find maybe one guy who can start with him and take the load off of the ball handling side of stuff and the creativity. And then you can go find a third guard who's maybe just a veteran grad transfer who can hit some shots and help you off the bench. It's just a different deal than saying, I need to go find a whole new starting backcourt. That's a whole different conversation if Ellis comes back. But I feel like you throw in Traynor into that conversation. You've got 2 freshmen coming in who I think will be able to contribute. A core 4 will be back, you would assume. And then, you throw in the Davis kid too. We don't know what to expect from him, the JUCO signing that Louisville had. So I think just with that group, and I'm not purposely excluding the big guys, I just don't know where they're at. But I think from just a wing and backcourt standpoint, and I include Traynor more in the wing-ish, four-ish,
for sure, yeah,
stretch four-ish category, I feel like there's a decent enough group that maybe you don't need to go add another wing. You need guards and probably bigs, but you may not need anybody in the middle of that lineup. Because I just named you 5 guys who can play like a 2.5 in Mike James, mostly a 3, and then some guys who can slide up to the 4 in terms of Glenn and Traynor.
I feel like you got to balance things, though. Obviously, we don't know about the freshmen coming in and what dimension they'll add, and that's obviously inserting guys into that. But how much are of the guys that are on the roster right now? Is it the fact that someone's going to score points eventually, and even Monte Ellis scores 30 points on a bad Golden State team back in the day type of thing, which I think that's where Ellis has separated himself the last month or so, in terms of, I feel like people used to view him as, okay, he's a dude that gets a lot of points, isn't efficient on a bad team, to where you look at the last few weeks and it's like, no, this is a certified dude that's really good at basketball. Like, he's a legit ACC starter caliber of player.
Yes.
You look at guys like Mike James and Lance and Traynor, who I think definitely have that potential.
I think they're rotating. I think they've shown that they can't. In Mike James's case, I think he's the furthest along in this discussion,
and I think he has the most to grow. Also.
Yes, yeah. And I think he has shown that he is for sure an ACC rotation guy. I don't know if he's a starter yet. On this team, he is. I really like him. But I would say, like, he could start for you. But I think in a 9-man rotation in the ACC on a good team, he is a guy you want on your team. And I think Lands is the guy who has the most work to do. Just because I think his confidence has been really shot for a lot of the season. And there's certain games where you're like, okay, he looks like he might be feeling a little bit. And then there's other games where you're like, he's not going to make the shot as soon as the ball gets to him. But he has shown a lot to me that suggests that, like, he can be a player for you. And so that guy, say you have him and Traynor as your 8th and 9th guy. That's pretty good. Even if you have him as your 6th or 7th man, like, that's pretty solid. But again, you just have to have the game changer type guys. You need to bring in game changer type guys. I think Caleb Glenn will help a lot. I don't think he's you're not going to walk into Louisville and average, 16 and 8 as Caleb Glenn. But he's a guy who I think is going to contest for a starting spot and give Kenny Payne and his staff something to think about. But that's where the transfer portal really helps you, is you've got to go find guys who you would say today in Penn, that dude is in your starting lineup and is going to play 25, 30 minutes a game.
Like, if someone, and I'm just going to use his name just because he was in the portal last year, Louisville didn't really have much of a connection with him at all, but just for the sake of, like, possessional battles and all that stuff. Like, if a Terrence Shannon type guy hits the portal, like, you gotta do everything you can. You gotta try to get him. You gotta try to get a dude like that. And I think Lands and Traynor and James have all shown potential, and you got the freshman coming in, but still, if a guy like that hits the portal, sorry guys, that you still got to go get the proven commodity in that aspect, right? Yeah, I think I'm with you from the standpoint of they need guards more than they need wings. They need bigs more than they need wings. but there's still room to upgrade at the wing position also, to where I'm not quite ready to just close the door off and say they're absolutely just set and they don't need any more wings.
No, and that's not what I'm saying. But I know that's not what I'm saying. I'm just
I'm just clarifying that
if if I'm Kenny Payne and I've got Curtis and Caleb coming in, Curtis Williams and Caleb Glenn coming in, and I've got Mike James, I've got Kamari Lands. I mean, that's like 4 guys, 3.5 guys who can play as a 3 for you. And I think Mike James is probably going to end up being more of a 2/3, but then Glenn is more of a 3/4. So you're guys, you need positional versatility. But my point is maybe the priority is different. So look, if a superstar kid who's like a 6'7" wing comes into the portal and it's like averaging 18 points a game at another school, yeah, you got to go try to get them. But I think it's not as big of a blow as missing out on the 7 big time guards that they missed out on this past spring in the same sense. Like, you have to go get probably 3 guards if Ellis moves on. You have to go get 3 guards. It could be 1 star guard and 2 good, solid
Jared West
guys. Yes, guys who can just help you. But you have to go get a bona fide playmaking star guard, and probably have to go get a bona fide big guy too. And I don't know what the future holds for Sydney Curry, for instance. It's unclear to me. I keep getting mixed signals about what the COVID eligibility year is for the junior college guys with Ellis and Sydney Curry. I don't know what Brandon Huntley Hatfield has to be thinking. I wonder if the injury has maybe changed his thought process of what he is looking for. And then I think Roosevelt Wheeler is a big question too, where it's like, a guy who just feels like it's a project, and we've talked about it. We've said it's got to be, what's the patience level for him? What's the patience level for the program? And how do they keep working there? And of course, we've gotten all the way into this podcast without somehow mentioning Jalen Withers. You got to think that there's probably other coaches. Well, I know that there are coaches from other schools who at least have some of these guys on their radar too, because the transfer portal works in both directions. And the difference is that one team is like, hey, we got to revamp our roster. We were 4-28 last year. And the other teams are thinking, how can we maybe figure out how to better tap into this guy than Louisville did? And that's a very different conversation.
I will say, when you are 4-28 or 5-27, I feel like the risk of that of getting a bunch of dudes poached off your team is a lot less. I would argue, just because I feel like a lot of people just they don't see the flashes of potential that the people that have been watching the program, watching the team all year have seen from a guy like a JJ Traynor or Jalen Withers, to where I would be, and this is again probably just me talking out my ass more than anything, but
just Jack, it's a family podcast.
But I feel like that would be a lot less likely than someone looking at a role player on a Duke or a Virginia and saying we could get more out of those dudes of teams that were good to really good.
I think you'd be surprised. I think speaking from experience and more from a standpoint of knowing the type of school that at least is interested in some of these guys, like I think there's some coaches who there's no doubt that a player on a team that's struggling the way Louisville is, even still, it's Louisville, it's the ACC. The fans will say, "Oh, they moved down." So it's like, "Oh, Josh Nickelberry transferred to LaSalle, like that's a step down to the A10." But if it's a good A10 program, if it's a program where they're going to get a chance to play
like a date
for NCAA tournaments, then you're like, okay. yeah, it's not the same caliber in terms of resources and tradition and conference affiliation, all that stuff. But that's a pretty good program, and it's worked out okay for them. And I think there's going to be a couple of schools like that that are tapping the tires, but that's still like another month away. And right now, a lot of it is just people picking up the phone and calling reporters, calling recruiting analysts and people like that, and just saying, like, what do you think about this kid? What have you heard about him? I'm sure there's conversations with AAU coaches and high school coaches, even though that's against the rules. But I'm sure you remember the Athletic article about all the recruiting that's done of the football kids who might be transferring, and all the work that's done long before their name even hits the portal. The basketball is the same way. There's a lot of differences in football and basketball recruiting, but there's a lot of similarities. And at the end of the day, you don't delete a lot of contacts from your phone number when you're recruiting, because there's a chance, especially now with the transfer portal, that you may need to make that phone call down the line and check in on somebody.
Yeah, doesn't Ed Cooley have the quote where he's like, it's okay to finish second in recruiting battles for high school kids now, because that means you're the first alternate if he decides to hit the portal.
Yeah, that's true.
Which Ed Cooley's worked the portal better than anyone, and he has taken advantage of both the local teams with Noah Locken and Hopkins this year.
I love Ed Cooley. I love Ed Cooley. Well, let's finish up on this, Jack, because I feel like Louisville fans, my experience with Louisville fans, and just there's a lot of joy for college basketball. Like, it's been very disappointing this year and last year. There's a lot of frustration, but like, of all of my friends who are fans of teams, Louisville fans all are still obsessed with the tournament and watch a lot of the games and stuff. Kentucky fans too. It's definitely a regional thing. IU fans as well, but like, a lot of my friends from back home, a lot of my friends from college are just like, yeah, I don't care.
It's been an eye-opening experience in Atlanta. Coming across more people that kind of, which I knew it was going to happen.
It's a pro city, Jack. It's a pro city.
Oh yeah, I went to a bar to watch Alabama Tennessee on Wednesday, and every single TV had the Hawks-Knicks game on, of the Hawks down by 25 points in the fourth quarter. I'm like,
come on,
just one TV, please.
Really?
Begging one TV. Yeah.
Did you get it? Did they give you?
I did. Yes, I did get my one TV. It was great.
But it is okay. So that's a funny.
I got weird looks, but it was great.
That's a funny side topic though, Jack, because my experience has been everywhere that I have lived. When I lived in DC, every sport was popular. They loved everything. When I moved to Florida, only football. And then the Heat were popular once LeBron James went there. But like, only football. And I kept watching college basketball, but I felt like I just felt like I was a weirdo in the community that I was watching college basketball.
Like I work nights at my job in the office now, and like I'll watch games on like an extra monitor and stuff, and like there'll be people that there's a group of us that like enjoy college basketball, we'll watch and it's great, but there's also some guys that would like rather talk about the XFL and like the USFL.
Yeah, I can't do that. No.
What are we doing, guys? Come on.
Come on. I opened my ESPN app the other day, and the first list of scores on the app were XFL scores. I'm like, what are we doing? Get this off of my screen, for the love of God. Give it a rest. It's not the fall. Like, go away. Anyway. All right. Well, I'm going to give you a rare out here, Jack. I'm going to give you a rare out because we already made our Final Four, like, at the moment, teams. And I'm curious if anything has changed there. And then, because I know you'll be able to answer this question, I have, two questions. It's a two-part question. So first we'll do Final Four teams. And then I want to do the team you think that is going to probably be in that 4 or 5 seed range that you think is going to lose, and the team you think that's going to be in that 11, 12, 13 in a power conference that you think is going to spring an upset.
All right. So
Start with the Final Four,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
let's be fast on the Final Four because the
Yeah.
other topic's more fun.
So my Final Four last time, just to remind myself, I had Bama, Houston, Baylor, and Kansas. Does that sound right? No, I had Xavier instead of Baylor.
You had Xavier.
I had Xavier. So I'm going to back out on Xavier because they don't play enough defense.
That's you said that wasn't a problem last time, and now that's your reason?
Well, no, I said they wouldn't win the title because of that.
Okay, all right.
I said they wouldn't win the title, but you can make a Final Four because of that.
Okay.
So, all right, but they aren't scoring as efficiently as they were earlier in the year. They have the Fremantle injury since then also, and how they work him back will be incredibly interesting. But I am instead going to go with another team that doesn't play a lot of defense in Baylor. because we saw it in the first half of that Baylor-Kansas game, to where that game, as much of a replica of the Louisville-Syracuse 2013 Big East title game that I could think of, from the standpoint that Kansas was even down the same 45-29 score that Louisville was at that point. Louisville obviously goes on a 44-10 run, last 15 minutes of the game, wins by 18. Kansas in this one, Baylor's guards were so incredibly good early in that game. Kansas goes on a 50-20 run. They end up winning by double figures. For the first half, Baylor looked like the best team in the country. In the second half, Baylor looked like Kansas looked like the team of the century. There's a difference.
Accurate.
But you look at that first half with Baylor and those three guards in the self-proclaimed year of the big, which has lived up to expectations, I would argue.
Yeah, it's been a good year for Bigs.
What wins games in the NCAA tournament, Jeff?
Guards.
Guard play. And who has better guard play than the Baylor Bears? No one. And yes, I'm not really huge on what they've gotten from Bridges and the forwards, but how they work Jonathan Chamua back, and if he can, because he's not going to get back to where he was before the injury, just because he's not. I mean, like that.
It's hard to do that, yeah.
Yeah, there's just not enough time for that to happen. But if he can be like 70, 75% of that, that gives you a much better back end defender to pair with Flo Thamba and kind of platoon both those guys in and out, to where I think they can get better defensively as the year goes on. You know, you're running out of time on the treadmill, on the runway, like Calaberry likes to say. But if they can defend well enough, I'm trusting those guards against literally anyone, to where I think they can make a Final Four.
All right. I don't remember who I picked in mine, so I'm just going to blow it all up. And
Houston and Purdue and TCU. And
TCU. I like TCU.
Yeah, TCU, which I like TCU too, but my point with them still stands is
no, they
got Mike Miles back, and they're incredible with Mike Miles, but if you forgive me, I know you said 11 or 12 seed, but they're a 6 seed that I could think make a Sweet 16 or
they could make a run. Yeah. I'm going to say I still like Houston. I still like Alabama. I think I'm going to back out on Purdue.
I'm with you.
And I'm going to add in, so Houston, Alabama, and I'm going to add in 2 Big 12 teams. And maybe I'm sticking too much to the hot. I'm looking at my phone here. I'm not weirdly looking off camera.
He's not confident in the picks. That's what's really happening.
Yeah. Well, the only one I'm super confident in is Kansas. Like, I'm like, yeah, Kansas is going to the final.
Alabama,
I like them a lot, and I like Houston a lot. Alabama in particular, I do really like, but I feel like Kansas is probably right now the best team in the country.
Plus now that they're getting actual balanced scoring too, is just game changing for them.
Yeah,
if give me one team though, I'm still taking Alabama. I am.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna copycat, so I'm gonna say Kansas and Baylor. I think so. Kansas, Baylor, Houston, Alabama.
So there's no chance that any of those teams make the Final Four now. We just cursed everything.
Correct. Well, based on the seeds, that's Jeff picking based
3 1s and a 2.
3 1s and a 2 based on the seeds, yeah.
Wow, aren't we original? This year of parody, and there's no great teams, all that. We've got 3 1s and a 2.
That's what happens.
We're weak.
We're weak. Okay.
Give me a Creighton. Give me an Indiana.
All right, Jack.
Give me a TCU.
Yes. Okay. Now you're talking. Maybe Kansas State gets hot again. Jack, I'll ask you this: So before we do the 4, 5, and 12, 13s, and I'm using Bracket Matrix, which if people have not checked that out, it's a great way to get kind of the average, not kind of, I don't, that's a verbal tick. It's an average of the bracket projection. So you don't have to just go look at the big websites that aren't even ever close to being the best among the bracketologies. You can go to Bracket Matrix, and it's an average of all of them, and gives you a better idea of what kind of where the thought process is for bracket projectors, who are never perfect. Some are pretty close to being exactly right, but it's rare to get more than a couple of them who do really, really well. And it's hard. I mean, it's a hard thing to do. So we'll use the average seeds for that. But before I say that, I want to ask you. I know Louisville fans probably in general, after their team almost tied it against them and was leading them, will probably be like, no way, no way. Is Virginia a team that you think can make a Final Four?
They're not playing their best basketball right now because obviously you just brought up with Louisville. They escaped Notre Dame at home this weekend. I still have a Bet Rivers wager from early November having them winning the ACC. So I need them to be the number one seed in the ACC tournament just to win some money. But
they should be. They probably will be. Yeah, it's a safe bet.
It's not as safe as you think. Pitt and Miami can still get in there.
That's a safe bet.
If Virginia wins at Carolina next week or whatever that is,
they will.
But
Jack, they're going to.
I'm blaming you if they don't. If Carolina plays their one game, anyways, that's tough. I think they make a Final Four. I don't know if they can win a national championship. They don't defend.
That's where I'm at.
They don't defend at the level that they did with Tony Bennett's best teams. They rely on offense more than defense, which you can kind of say the same thing the year they did actually won the title, except that year, DeAndre Hunter, lottery pick, Powell guy, Ty Jerome, certified pros. I love Armand Franklin. I do. Really good player. Reese Beekman, really good player. Vanderplas, really good player.
Different.
They just aren't those guys. They just aren't those guys. And except E.A. Clark's still E.A. Clark with more experience.
He's still there. Yeah, he's still there.
And, he was teammates with Grouse Sampson. Don't forget that.
He's 39 years old.
Yes, but I think they're a team that can win games and get to the second weekend, possibly even a Final Four. But if you're asking me to take them over a Kansas or an Alabama or a Houston, no. I just don't see it from that standpoint.
All right, so let's do this. This is going to be fun. Let's do rapid fire here, Jack, because
I'm bad at rapid fire.
You're bad at rapid fire, but it's okay. I want you to just first team that comes to mind, and I want you to just say it, and that's it. That's your answer. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to hold you to it. I'm going to hold myself to it. And then if they're not a 4 or 5 seed, the whole thing's a wash. All right. The 4 seeds as of today on Bracket Matrix. I'm going to use Bracket Matrix instead of the projection thing from the selection committee. Kansas State, Iowa State, Connecticut, and Xavier. Those are the averaged out 4 seeds.
Iowa State.
I'm not done yet.
I don't care. Iowa State.
Iowa State. Okay, so all right. So Iowa State, because the 5 seeds are Indiana, Miami, Florida, St. Mary's, and Creighton.
Iowa State.
Still sticking with Iowa State.
I honestly, because I got it pulled up also. The of those 5 seeds, I mean, if you're giving me the bet, I'll flip it. Best chance to make a Final Four out of those 2 teams. I would put 2 5 seeds before I'd put a 4 seed on there. I would put Miami and Creighton as better chances to make a Final Four than any of the 4 seeds.
The team that I think I'm probably there. The team that I just feel like is destined to have a really disappointing March is UConn. I don't know why. I just don't trust them. You're
just saying that to slight Doster.
Yes, but also, and I grew up a Providence fan, so and UMass, so we're really not a huge UConn guy. But no, but in all seriousness, their record is good, so this is a ridiculous thing to say. I just feel like I have college basketball reporters on notifications, and I feel like every time there is a big game UConn is in, they lose. Recently.
Right.
Maybe I'm crazy and like I'm shooting from the hip here. I'll pull up their thing just so they don't feel entirely bad.
They're incredibly high in the net.
Their
Metrics love them.
Numbers, yeah, the metrics love them.
So if you want to give me a metrics darling that's going to lose early, I'm going Tennessee all day.
Jack, UConn is 6-7 since December 31st.
That's not good.
6-7. Now they've played some good teams. Don't get me wrong. I mean, their losses aren't horrible.
You gotta play good teams in the tournament too, though.
You gotta play good teams and you gotta win those games. So I'm gonna say UConn is my pick for that. All right. So now let's shift gears. I'm gonna have you pick 112 seed and 113 seed. If you're looking at Bracket Matrix, this exercise is more for the people listening. Currently, it is Oral Roberts, College of Charleston, Kent State, and Drake. Who you got among those four to win a game?
Give me the toothpaste, Oral Roberts.
I'm going College of Charleston. I
like it.
Charleston. All right, 13 seeds. Wow, VCU, Liberty, Southern Miss, and Utah Valley.
Can we extend it to the first 14 seeds so I can pick Iona?
Pick Iona? Yes, we can.
All right, I'm picking Iona, but of the 13 seeds, give me Darius McGee and Liberty all day.
Yeah.
All day, Darius McGee. What a baller.
Yeah, and they are a team that metrics really like them. I know I'm looking at their Ken Palm right now. I mean, I know they got blasted by Alabama the second game of the season, but
Everyone
I just feel like
Alabama.
Yeah, I just feel like Liberty always is a very tough NCAA tournament out. And if you're a 4-13 or 5-12 team and you're any of these power conference teams or even a St. Mary's, a team like that is usually really good and expects to be in the tournament, you don't want to get drawn with Liberty. You just don't.
I've been a good boy and kept it rapid fire until now. Liberty.
Oh, boy.
I'm not going to go too long, I promise. But Liberty does what you need from a team to be a Cinderella. Yeah. They slow the game down because they play, the pack line, Tony Bennett style of defense. So it's a low possession game, which favors the underdog. They can shoot it, favors the underdog, and they have a certified stud to where you can give them the ball, create some offense, and hit really tough shots.
Yep.
That being said, they're probably going to lose by 30 in the 4-13 game now because
we said that, yeah.
Yes,
but they're built like that. They are, and you need a game breaking player. You need a team that shoots threes really well. Usually, that's how an upset happens. But this is a team that, like you said, Jack, they're not going to get into a boat race with someone. They're going to make it really frustrating to play. You remember Manhattan? Remember how awful that experience was for Louisville?
Yep. They almost lost that game.
They almost lost that game. But when you look at, they take care of the ball on offense and they take the ball away on defense. And when you compact those possessions down to what is about an average of 65 a game, and you're not turning the ball over, that maximizes your potential, and you're taking the ball away, that hurts. It hurts more. That's why we talk about turnover percentage. That's why anyone talks about turnover percentage now in basketball is if you turn the ball over 12 times, but you have 80 possessions, that's a whole bigger difference than 12 times and 60 possessions. That's a huge difference. And that's why the number of turnovers to me is important, but I need to know more about the detail behind it. So in Louisville, it has, 25% of their possessions are turnovers. That's bad because they're only playing 70 possession basketball. That they can't live on offense with those kinds of numbers. So, all right. So we're picking Liberty and everyone's going to be mad at us, and that's fine.
Yeah. I got one for you before
Bellarmine folks in particular will be mad at us. Yes.
Well, I mean, Bellarmine beat Liberty in the conference tournament last year. Maybe they'll knock them off again this year and keep them out of the tournament. A 6 through 8 seed that could make the Final Four.
Pittsburgh.
That didn't take long. I don't think they're
they're not going to be a 6 to 8 unless they go on a run.
They are a 10 at the moment.
Yeah. They need to win out. Probably they need to win out. I think they only have one more game that's really that's not against one of the bottom half of the league should be in good position. They are the biggest threat, I think, to your bet, just because of their schedule. Their schedule is lined up in a way that, yeah, they had the Virginia Tech game on the road, but the rest of their schedule, refresh my memory if you're looking at it, but the rest of their schedule, I think, only has one more game against a team that's a real ACC contender, and everything else is should be winnable games for Pitt. And then I think in the NCAA tournament, or
they do go at Miami end of the year.
At Miami. That's the game I was thinking of.
Yeah,
but don't they have Boston College? Like, they have a couple of games in there that are.
So Tuesday they host Georgia Tech.
Yeah, should win that.
Saturday host Syracuse.
Should win that.
The following Wednesday at Notre Dame, then closing out.
Should win that. Okay, so that they should go 3-1. They've already beaten Miami this season, but they have something that at the ACC tournament I could see take off over 3 days, or they lose on the first day. And that is, they've got a couple of guards who can really get going. Burton is awesome. And then you throw in a Blake Hinson. If Blake Hinson is making shots, Pitt looks like a 4 seed. If Blake Hinson is like 0 for 8, and then he's like, still participating, but it's not the same. They're a different team, but I really like them. I know their metrics in terms of like what people are looking at in the rankings and things don't look great, but they did beat a team in Northwestern that is now catching people's eye. That's a nice non-conference win, and they've beaten all the teams that in the ACC that people think are actually good. So Virginia, they beat Miami. I mean, those are NC State. Those are good wins that Pittsburgh has. So it's not just because I'm an alum. I actually think they're pretty good. And if I'm a team that's got to play a 7-10 winner in the second round, or an 8-9 winner in the second round, and I'm one of those top 8 seeds, prepare for a war, because that is going to be a very difficult game to have to beat a team like Pitt if they get to that point.
Here's what's going to be crazy about this tournament. And again, this comes from the two guys that just picked 3 1 seeds and a 2 seed to make a Final Four. But you look at the 6 through even the 10 line, and I could give you teams from each line. The 6, TCU, Illinois.
Yeah,
keep going.
I like TCU so much.
Yeah. You go down the line. 7, Maryland. The 8s, Duke, who's been playing better. The 9s, Arkansas, North Carolina State. Oklahoma State's playing better. The 10s, Pittsburgh, as you mentioned. Texas A&M, who's 11-2 in conference, that could still technically win the SEC regular season. You can make arguments for teams on each seed line, 6 through 10, and say, would you really be all that shocked if that team was in an Elite 8 game with a chance to go to a Final Four?
Jack, if the Pittsburgh Panthers make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, I don't even know.
When you get down to the 10s, I think it's a little bit more of a stretch. Like, I'm not. It is. I'm not going to pick Pittsburgh or A&M to be a Sweet 16 Elite 8 type team.
I will. We'll balance it out.
But with the 9s, would you really be surprised with Arkansas now that you got Nick Smith back?
No, and I wouldn't want to play them.
I wouldn't want to play them.
That's the same thing. That's the thing about those games is like, going back, speaking of Pitt, being an alum, like anyone who has any affiliation to Butler, like, it hurts me deeply thinking about losing to them in 2011 in the second round of the NCAA tournament. But that was a team that nobody wanted to freaking play in the second round because it was Butler. And it's just, that's a thing. And those teams typically in that 7 to 10 range typically are either one of two things. They are mid-major type teams that have played so well and probably beaten 1 or 2 like Power 5 or Power 6 teams in the non-conference, that they have moved all the way up into that realm instead of just being the really good 12 seed. Or it is typically a team that is in a Power 6 league that just hasn't quite gotten it together, whether that was through injuries, suspensions, whatever issue it is, and they could show up and you beat them by 30, or they could show up and beat you. And that's where the tournament gets super fun for me, is you get all of these incredible matchups like in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 of the best teams in the country. Yeah. But that second round, once these big wigs have staved off the 15 and 16 and 14 seeds, and they have to play one of these other teams that on any other season, if they maybe this guy doesn't get hurt, maybe like a Mike Miles, maybe TCU, for instance, Mike Miles doesn't get hurt,
They could be
TCU,
like a 3 seed right
they
now.
would be like a 3
Yeah.
seed. Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to play them. You just don't. And so it's fascinating, and I cannot wait for it. I feel like we're out at the point now. It's February 19th, where you're just kind of like, all right, let's do the tournament now. Like,
Yeah.
all right, let's
Did you
get to the tournament.
Did you see anything out of the bracket reveal? I know it means nothing past that day in terms of where the teams are, but something that we can say, okay, the committee's valuing this more than this year, or okay, this thing doesn't mean as much as we thought it might.
The only thing that I was a little surprised by was your team's inclusion.
Oh, Indiana's. Oh, I was surprised also. Don't like you go out and say
Okay.
it. Like I thought if Indiana was going to make it, they would be like the last team in there. The fact that they were the top 4 seed, but I was very surprised by that. And
yeah.
But that puts them in a situation now because we've talked about this here locally for so many years because there's always either a first round in Lexington or a regional in Indianapolis. If Indiana gets a top 4 protected seed,
and then it's in Louisville,
and then it's in Louisville. Like I've had conversations with my little brother about that, who went to Alabama, which no one knows that he went to Alabama except for the 2 of us. And like I look at that matchup, I have no faith in Indiana actually beating Alabama, but like just the thought process of Alabama having to play a true road game in the NCAA tournament as the number 1 overall seed. It's like, if anything's going to beat that team in an Indiana-Alabama matchup, it takes a situation like that.
Give us Purdue and IU in the same regional. Give us
that's
Purdue
unlikely.
and IU. It's allowed. Isn't it allowed at this point? The bracketing principles, if the Big Ten gets enough teams in.
The Big Ten will get enough teams in, but the issue is,
give it to us, Jack. I don't want to hear whatever your excuse is.
I mean, Purdue and Indiana and Louisville would be nuts, but Purdue's
would be incredible. It would be amazing.
But here's the issue. So like I was genuinely surprised that Houston was the number 2 overall seed over Purdue because I thought they would favor Purdue's 9 quad 1 wins over Houston's 4. So where I kind of viewed it before the selection shows, okay, it's pretty nip and tug tight between Alabama and Purdue for the number 1 overall seed. Now I view that completely differently because Purdue not only has to jump Alabama, they have to jump Houston too. And yes, Purdue has a bunch of home games coming up at the end of the year. They beat Ohio State on Sunday without Zed Key or Akoa for Opraka. There we go. I was confusing with Louisville's Akoa for, but so Ohio State quite literally did not have a front line, which is not good. We're going up against Zach Edey, and Ohio State's also lost 13 out of 14 now, so just toast as a season. But the thought process that they're going to be able to do enough to pass both of those teams, to where I think that changes the dynamic to where I think Alabama's firmly in the position now, unless they just completely squander something that I don't foresee happening, to where they have 5 or 6 more quad 1 wins than Houston does. Plus they have the best win in college basketball all year, winning at Houston.
Yeah.
So they have the head-to-head. That's
a big trump card.
On top of that, to where I think Alabama, unless something catastrophic happens down the stretch, has almost locked up that number 1 overall seed, to where they will be playing in Louisville.
Don't sell their fans short either. They will travel.
Alabama
travels. Yeah.
That being said, I got the weekend off for the second weekend of the tournament. So and that has nothing to do with Indiana, like expecting them to play games in Louisville or anything. That's like, there's tournament games where I grew up. I'm definitely
you should probably be here.
Trip home for that. But just that thought process though of Indiana playing Alabama in the center, like I would, as Indiana graduate, I would sign up for that today in a heartbeat, even though I still don't expect IU to beat Alabama. Right?
All right. Well,
I mean, you look at that 5 line in Brad Matrix of Indiana, Miami, St. Mary's, Creighton.
Any team, Jack, any
teams.
Any fan would say you would sign up for that in a heartbeat if it's your team. Like, you want Bama. You want Bama.
Yes.
You want You want Bama, but Bama doesn't want Pitt in that game before that. So we'll see.
You got to get the 8-9 matchup. Wait, yeah. I go in thinking of getting Alabama, Indiana, and instead it's Pitt, Indiana. Federico posterizes Jackson Davis.
There you go. Well, now that we've sufficiently pissed off Louisville fans with a half an hour talking about nothing to do with their team, I think that's a good place to start.
So are we going to do a bracket preview episode in a couple weeks then?
We should.
Yes.
We might as well. And you know what I would love to do, Jack, is as the season draws to a close, maybe solicit some questions from Louisville fans and maybe do like a listener Q&A type thing.
That'd be great.
I think that'd be a fun idea here in the final couple of weeks. So
yes,
let's get that going.
One last note from Jack Grossman.
There's always one more note from Jack.
Since January 22nd of 2022, Louisville is 0-24 against all ACC teams not named Clemson and Georgia Tech.
I know they're 3-1.
They are 3-1 against those two, and they play at Georgia Tech this Saturday.
That's crazy.
I will be in attendance for it.
That's insane.
This thing needs to be promoted like the Flint, Michigan Mega Bowl.
That is
game of the century, Jeff.
That stat is insane. Insane. Big offseason.
Louisville owns Josh Pastner.
Okay. That's a great line to finish the podcast on. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everyone, and listening, or either. And we'll talk to you next week.